Hello, and welcome to the Godly Playroom at First United Church in Wetaskiwin, Alberta. My name is Ruth Lummox, and it's my privilege to sit in this space to tell stories and mostly to welcome you. So it's great to see you, whether this is your first Godly Play story or one of many. We hope you find it a way to come close to God. So I wonder what you need to be ready this morning. You might like to have a candle ready to light, whether that's flame or battery operated, depending on your circumstances. You might like to have some art materials, paper and pen for journaling, or some crayons or markers or paints, some clay, something to kind of get your creativity going in response to the story today. Sometimes it helps us move more deeply into this story. You might also like to have something for feast. I'll usually just have a glass of water and maybe a muffin or some crackers or some fruit. Nothing elaborate. Know that you can pause the video at any time if you need to take a break or use the washroom or there's an interruption. But it's probably more healing and holy for you if you're able to enter this time with a minimal amount of distraction. So I wonder what you need to set aside. It's the beginning of a new year. Things are coming towards month end. It's a little bit more like winter in the last week or so. And whatever's going on in your life, this is a time to pause, to know yourself held and blessed and drawn to the light. So let's take a deep breath together. And another one. And another one. And whenever you're ready, come on in and join the circle. This year, our calendar is just a little off. It's one of the challenges of having kind of fixed pieces when the season of Epiphany moves. It shortens this year, and some years it lengthens, and that all depends on when Easter falls, because Easter is, I think, the first full moon after the spring equinox, and so there's all those dates that get shifted. So if we count back, because we know the first Sunday in Lent will be February 18th, then there are 2 Sundays in February that'll be part of Epiphany, and we're on the 3rd Sunday of January. So really our arrow would point here, but when we're counting forward from Christmas, we had the Sunday between Christmas and New Year's, and then the first Sunday in January. So we run out a little bit. Anyways, so we're in this season of Epiphany, this green season before we get to Lent. That's really all you need to know. And you can check and figure out where you are in terms of the time of the year. But we are in the color green. Welcome into the circle. I hope you've got everything you need to be ready, whether that's a candle or something for feast or something to work with for art materials. Let's take a deep breath. And we'll light our candle. We remember that once there was someone who said such amazing things and did such wonderful things, the people wondered who he was. And one time they just had to ask, "Who are you?" And so one time, when they asked him that question, he said, "I am the light." And that light shines. And curiously, no matter how much we share the light, it doesn't get any smaller. I'm going to put it back up on the shelf so that we can get ready to tell our story. And I'll show you where to find this story. So when you're in the Godly Playroom, you can find it to work with it on your own. Our story for today and for next week, you'll find on this shelf in the Godly Playroom. This is a sacred story line of shelves, both the Old Testament and then these stories that happen in what we call the New Testament are more the stories about Jesus. The stories on that Old Testament shelf are all those stories about the people of God playing hide and seek and coming to know who God is. And that many of them happen in the desert, which is kind of in between the two shelves. And there's a story from Jesus' ministry as well that begins in the desert. But our story for today is right here. So you'll know where to find it if you want to work with it. This is the Sea of Galilee. We couldn't fit the whole sea in our room, but so many important things happen by the sea that we need at least a bit of it to help us tell the stories. The sea is a strange and beautiful place. When the wind blows, the sea becomes very rough and wild. It can happen all in an instant. Then the wind is gone, and the sea is calm, peaceful, and still. Once, there was someone who said such amazing things and did such wonderful things, people wanted to be close to him. When he came close to people, lives changed. People were able to do things they'd never done before. Even the sick became well. One day, so many people crowded around him, he got into a boat to teach. He taught all day. When evening came, he was very tired. He said to his friends, "Let's sail across the sea." So Simon, Andrew, James, John, and Levi went with him. He was so tired, he went to sleep. Suddenly, a strong wind began to blow. The sea grew very rough and wild. Waves began to beat into the boat. It began filling with water, and yet the man was still asleep. "Wake up," his friends shouted over the storm. "We're drowning. Don't you care?" And the man woke up, and he said to the wind, "Peace, be still." And he said to the sea, "Peace, be still." The wind stopped blowing. The waves stopped splashing. Everything was peaceful and still. "Why are you afraid?" he asked his friends. "Have you still no faith?" They were amazed and wondered who the man was, that even the wind and the waves did what he said. I wonder what part of this story you liked best. I wonder what part of this story is the most important part. I wonder if there's any part of this story we could leave out and still have all the story that we need. I wonder what part of this story is most like you, or where you are in this story. I wonder what it was like for those disciples when that wind came up and the waves began to splash the water into the boat. I wonder if you've ever been in a big storm. I wonder how the man could sleep through such a great storm. I wonder what the disciples thought when he woke up and spoke to the wind and the waves. I wonder what they will tell people when they get to shore on the other side. I wonder if they will still follow this most amazing man. I'm going to put the story away, and you can begin to think about what you might like to do in response. You don't necessarily have to have fancy art materials at home, but maybe you have something that you would like to work with, or to be with the story just a little bit more. I have my materials here ready, so I'll put the story away and then you come on back whenever you're ready. Pause the video to get your materials if you need to. So there were the disciples, Thomas and Levi and Peter and Andrew and John. And that most amazing man. And the boat. There's even a bit of a cushion and a little blanket in here. Help the man rest. I wonder if you've ever been so tired that you just couldn't stay awake. And that beautiful and strange place, the Sea of Galilee. Welcome back. I wonder what you found to work with. So I picked up some paints because I just couldn't imagine this story without some water. So I have my bowl of water, and I've actually got the colors, the watercolor tubes this time, which you can pick up at almost any art store. And then I can mix and match the colors a little bit more. And I do have my work tray to try to keep things tidy. If you're at home, you could use a piece of plastic, or maybe you've got your own work tray or a cookie sheet, or even newspaper, just something that keeps you from painting on your table or whatever desktop that you might be working at. And I do have a cloth for cleaning my brushes, and I have a little piece of watercolor paper. You can use any kind of paper when you're painting. The difference with watercolor paper, it's usually a little bit heavier weight. And so if you're using a lot of water, it won't get that fuzzy paper nubby kind of look to it as quickly as just say a piece of office paper might. And it also doesn't curl quite as much, although it will curl a bit. So after your painting is dried, you might want to put it under some heavy books or something that'll help flatten it out again if it's a picture that you want to frame or keep somewhere. Well, I think I'll start with, there's kind of a dark blue and a brighter blue. And so I'm just going to put a little bit of those on my work tray. The beauty of the work tray is I can put a little daub of paint on it, and then I can kind of mix them and blend them. But you could do the same thing at home. You could even use, if you've got like a plastic container, like a margarine container or yogurt container or something like that, you could use it to help blend the colors. Or you could, you can even use like a Corelle plate, something that's a hard surface. And the biggest thing is wash it really thoroughly with hot water and soap, because some watercolors are not exactly poisonous, but they are toxic. So it's not necessarily something that you want to use on a surface that you're going to eat from. So then I'm going to take my brush here, and I'm going to take just a little bit of each color and kind of mix it together. And I think I'm even going to throw in a little bit of green. See if I can make that kind of sea green color. But I don't need very much green. That's sometimes the tricky part when you're doing mixing and matching paints, is you can waste an awful lot. So it's good to practice just that little bit of a daub of color. Ooh, that's kind of a good murky color. It's a little bit different than just the standard blue. And this time I didn't put a wash on first. And I'm kind of wishing I had, because then my colors would run differently. And a wash simply means you take a brush that's a little bit wider and spread some water on your paper before you put any color on it. And then the color kind of runs. And so instead, I'm going to take this brush, just kind of like a fan. But you could do the same thing if you had a comb, would work, to just kind of drag it through the color that's there and make some fine lines. So I am going to put a bit of a wash for my sky though. I still have a bit of color on that. I can add in some other color. And then if you wanted to kind of make some clouds, you could take your cleanup cloth or a Kleenex or a sponge if you wanted, and you kind of just daub it into your color, and it'll make a bit of pattern, and sometimes what we call a void, where it pulls the color off the paper. And I might even add, there is a little bit of black here. I don't know if I can get just enough black. I don't want to use a whole lot. I use some black and some white and see if I can make a bit of gray here, which is a bit of a misconception, because gray with real watercolors is often more, oddly enough, yellow, red, and I want to say brown, but I could be wrong. So I'm going to put a little bit more water back on my skyline here. And then see about adding in some clouds. They've gotten quite dark, so I'm gonna See if I can't rescue it a little bit with my dauber. And then if you get enough color on your cleanup thing, you can even kind of use it as a stamp, just to add some really light texture in. Although this just kind of looks like the cat walked across it with muddy feet, but we'll see. Maybe I'll just leave this guy alone for a bit and go back to my waves. I think life's like that a lot, right? You know, we kind of have a plan, we kind of think, oh, this is what I'd like to do. And then we start doing stuff and it doesn't quite work out the way that we had imagined. And it's a little bit frustrating, I find. And I imagine all those people who followed that most amazing man had those moments too, right? Where they thought, oh, we kind of know where this is going, or this is where we want it to go. And then it didn't. Or just when they kind of thought they knew who he was, he would do something like calm a storm or heal someone. And that whole thing of people's lives being changed whenever they came close to him. I wonder if your life's been changed. Maybe because of your relationship with God. Maybe someone else that's come close to you kind of reminded you or showed you a different way. I wonder what helps you feel calm or peaceful when things are very turbulent or chaotic, stormy. I know it helps me to take a deep breath, but sometimes it helps me to talk to other people. Kind of remind me that every storm runs out of rain. Or snow, I guess, at this time of year. Hope you've been able to enjoy some of that snow that fell in the last few weeks. I've been missing it. Although I haven't missed shoveling. The other fun thing sometimes with a watercolor is to sprinkle that heavy salt on it when it's still wet, and you get a bit of crystal-y shape happening. It's kind of cool just to see it happen. Well, I think I made almost as much mess as I should make this morning. I think it's time to kind of clean up my mess. I feel bad about that paint that I didn't use. Maybe I should have tried painting on a bigger piece of paper. But I'll invite you to pause the video if you need to do that and clean up your artwork, or if you need to work a little bit longer in your response time, feel free to do that. And then come on back and we'll say our prayers and share a bit of feast together. Welcome back. So let's just take a moment and offer our prayers of thanks and for others as we get ready to feast together. Sometimes if there's more than one person in your household, you might want to do what we sometimes call a squeeze prayer. So you say your prayers and squeeze the hand of the person beside you, and then they offer their prayers. And it moves around the circle in that way. So I'm going to imagine that you are here as part of this circle with me, and I'll hold out my hand when I'm finished, and when you're ready, I'll take it back. And then we'll feast. Thank you, Creator, for this beautiful and wonderful world, for water, and the many, many ways that we enjoy it and thrive from it, for the snow that's fallen and a warm place to be, a safe place to be, and good company. Amen. Well, my feast is fairly simple. I have my water and I keep it in the water bottle so I don't knock it over when I'm moving the camera and the story and all my materials. I used to be able to pull off a glass of water here, but not always. And I found some goldfish. So they're not quite stormy creatures, but at least they might be found in the Sea of Galilee or by the lake park or Pigeon Lake or Wizard Lake or whatever lake you happen to be close to. I think when I hear those words, Sea of Galilee, I imagine a really great big piece of water, kind of like the ocean, but it's not that big. I don't think we have the map in here anymore, although we do have an atlas, so you can look up some of that geography if you're interested in those kinds of details. But the Sea of Galilee is, I think, kind of like Cold Lake in that it's really long and not super wide, although it's wider than Cold Lake. And it has hills all the way around it. So sometimes that wind comes down that valley in between those hills, and that's where the storms can come up quickly. Or perhaps storms build and you can't quite see them when you're on the water because they're in behind the hills. Sherry talked about a storm that came up like that on her once when she was out in the boat fishing with some family. I'm pretty lucky when I go out in my kayak or boat. We can check the weather, we can look at the radar for that area, but surprises still happen. So it's good to be prepared a little bit, but always to try to be safe. And then go. Because we need to live our lives. We can't just always be afraid of things. So I wonder what's waiting for you this week. And I wonder what will help you be that calm presence in whatever storms might blow through your life or the lives of those around you. Maybe you'll be able to remember this story and to listen for God, for Jesus, or the Spirit that speaks peace into your fear or your anxiety or wonder or uncertainty or even just those kind of daily frustrations and irritations. and know yourself held in the love of God. And before we know it, it is time to change the light. So watch what happens. Some people miss this part. Right now, the light is just in this one place and time. But when we change the light, it will spread out and it will fill this room. And it might get so thin that we don't see it after a while, but just because we can't see something doesn't mean it isn't there. So watch what happens. The light is very deep in the candle. Can you see what happened when it changed? So whatever this week holds for you, in calm or in storm, may you be well. May you look after one another. God bless until we meet again.